I'm really glad Stella talked so much about art in this week's Torah portion. And if you didn't catch this, on the front of the pamphlet is an original pen drawing Stella made. In this week's Torah portion, you talked about art and in your own life, and it's the role it plays in your own life. I'm also glad that you raised the juxtaposition between the Mishkan and the golden calf. The Mishkan, what we read about this week, being this magnificent, divinely inspired community volunteer building project that we read about, also the namesake of our community, and the latter, the golden calf, being iconically a not divinely inspired, but also volunteer building project that we read about actually in next week's Torah portion. So the Torah describes the Mishkan first and the incident with the golden calf second, but actually our sages tell us that the order in which these things happened is actually reversed. And so what they tell us is that what we read about next week is what actually took place first, that the Israelites are standing at the foot of the mountain. It's been 40 days, and they're waiting for Moses, and they're impatient, and they want clarity. They want a leader. They want God. And so they make one. And so while the Mishkan kind of comes out of the generosity of people's hearts, the golden calf really comes out of a place of insecurity and fear and a mob mentality in which thousands of people are swept up. The golden calf is born out of the Israelites' inability to live with even a few moments of boredom or uncertainty or discomfort. So Hasidic masters describe the golden calf as being one of the Jewish people's original sins, which isn't a language that Jews use very much. And it's not because this act of idol creation was so deviant, though it was, famously violating the second commandment, just given on Sinai, thou shalt not create graven images in place of God. But there are plenty of places the Israelites in the Torah violate God's commandments, those that the Hasidic masters don't say are like an original sin. Rather, what makes the golden calf incident so uniquely important as a cautionary tale is because it's so relatable. Who among us hasn't struggled to sit with boredom and uncertainty, right? How many of us reach for something to soothe that sort of inexplicable, irritable feeling that we get in a moment? Okay, group confession time. What's your guilty pleasure about the thing that you do when you suddenly get that like itchy thumb or irritable, anxious feeling that you need to do something? Sorry? Draw? Oh, chocolate. Sorry. I was like, wow, how evolved of you. Okay, yeah, chocolate. Beautiful. Great. That's very relatable. I relate. I'm particularly fond of any kind of chocolate, dark chocolate from Trader Joe's. You know, it comes in. Okay, others? Pull out your phone, right? I mean, if we were having this conversation 20 years ago, I sort of wonder, like, what did we do 20 years ago? You know, for people becoming bar mitzvah and younger than that, I'm sorry that you never knew a world before the smartphone. But yes, once upon a time, that wasn't what we did. But now, yeah, I mean, who among us hasn't just reached for a phone? And then really any app will do, right? Like a dating app or Tetris or email or work or whatever. It's just something to kind of entertain us, to just settle that anxious feeling, right? Did I miss anybody want to confess anything else before I go on? You were literally texting while I was talking about the sermon, I'm sure, right? Okay, so I'm not saying that every time we reach for our phones or for food when we're bored that we are constructing an idol. I'm not saying that. I am saying that the solution to existential uncertainty that is inherent in life is not finding a quick fix. It's learning how to tolerate uncertainty, right? It's learning how to tolerate that feeling inside of ourselves. The solution for discomfort and boredom is like the literal opposite of what I feel like is the adage, many of us are familiar with, don't just sit there, do something. It's the opposite of that. It's don't just do something, sit there. Sit there. Sit there. So what's powerful about the Mishkan is it takes all the same elements as Sela beautifully described, the gold and the silver and the lapis lazuli and the textiles, and instead of creating something solid that the people can satisfy their need to replace God, to put something in the place of that empty space, the Mishkan actually opens up space. I'm glad we got to see all of the, the descriptions of the posts and the curtains and the, hooks for the curtains, because you got actually a sense of the open space that the Mishkan envisions, in which everyone is collaborating and building to create something transcendent, but not that tells people what to think, but rather opens up space for people to dream, to see what they want to see. God becomes not a thing, but rather like an experience, a presence, a shared undertaking, a verb. God becomes a verb, a doing, In order to find God, according to sort of Mishkan theology, one has to become very comfortable with open, unstructured space, with uncertainty, unfolding, moment by moment, which can surprise and can delight and can disappoint and can frustrate, of course. But ultimately, this unfolding series of moments comprises a life fully lived, unfolding at the pace it's supposed to unfold, which often, of course, feels like really too slow. We're like, come on, could we just move this a little faster? But actually, that's just life. And the more comfortable we can become with those moments of boredom and uncertainty, the more God we can truly experience. And importantly, the fewer poor decisions we will make in our quest to temporarily soothe our discomfort with screens and with substances. Right? Praising the unexpected virtues of boredom, Lin-Manuel Miranda has said, there is nothing better to spur creativity than a blank page or an empty bedroom. So in June of 2023, I said yes to joining an 18-month fellowship called The Wisdom of Not Knowing. I deleted the email the first 3 times I got it, and then finally the organizer, wrote me a personal, no, this isn't like a mass email to everyone, I'm inviting you, Rabbi Lizzie Heidemann, to join a fellowship. Maybe you need it. That would be starting, the fellowship was supposed to start the following winter, taught by Rabbi Adina Allen, who is the founder of something called the Jewish Studio Project, which is like Jewish Torah and art located in the Bay Area, and then Rabbi Lisa Goldstein, who's a well-known meditation teacher. And the idea of the fellowship was that we are living in times that have been appropriately called VUCA. Anybody know what VUCA stands for? Volatility, uncertainty, chaos, and ambiguity. So we live in VUCA times. And think back for a moment now to June of 2023. Biden was still president. October 7th had not happened yet. And yet, we all could feel the extent to which VUCA was our reality. And when the 12 of us finally then gathered at the Covenant Foundation office in New York the following January 2024, you could imagine that it felt a lot more VUCA than it did when we all said yes, for all the reasons that you can imagine. And yet there we were, all gathered around a long boardroom table with large pieces of thick paper, drawing paper in front of us, along with a smattering of sheets of colored tissue paper and Mod Podge and ripped up magazine clippings and paintbrushes and felt tip fancy pens in all colors and sizes and markers. And we, rabbis, community organizers, day school principals, camp directors, are sitting there thinking, the world is on fire? And you want us to make art and meditate? Yes, obviously, yes. Rabbi Adina Allen described that when she was a kid, whenever she had a hard day or didn't know what to do about a situation at school or with a friend, she would tell her mom, and her mom, who is an art therapist, would say to her, have you made art about it yet? Have you made art about it yet? And so the truth is, unlike Sela here, I had not made art about my feelings yet. I certainly had not done what the fellowship was creating space for, studying Jewish text, prayer, song, silent contemplation, and then turning a lo-fi beats playlist on Spotify so that I could Mod Podge my way to greater lightness and clarity in this VUCA moment. I had not done those things. I had not done those things in that order, and certainly not done them in a group setting. And I was very nervous, actually. I was nervous I couldn't do it. I was nervous I wouldn't know what to do with the open space or with the page. I was worried that I didn't have an agenda or a goal or a sort of outcome I was working toward. I was worried I wouldn't know how to make art, or the art that I was going to make wouldn't be good. It's like, where is the kindergartner in each one of us that does not worry about those things, as we approach adulthood? But there I was, feeling all of those feelings. But we were in a group setting, so I didn't have the option of like taking out my phone when I felt all those, kind of negative feelings to tune them down. Or going to the fridge. So in the discomfort, I sat. All of us sat. And as we sat there passing markers and dipping paintbrushes and ripping magazine pictures and glue sticking them to our pages, we were instructed not to chit-chat, not to comment on each other's work, not even to say like, oh, wow, that's so beautiful. Like, no. This isn't about your judgment of anyone else, even nice judgment. This is actually about a practice of making art. Don't think too hard. Move from a place of soul, like a place that's deeper than your rational, logical mind, but rather be moved, like the builders of the Mishkan, to create from your heart and soul. I suddenly realized, one way to understand ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, and you will love the Lord your God with all of your mind and strength and being, with all your heart and soul and everything. What we read right after Seleletus in the Shema. If God isn't a thing to love, God is a process to feel, to embrace, to be present with, even in the discomfort. Your heart and your soul have to be present for that. That's how we understand that. God's not a thing to love. God is a way of being in love with all things at all times and places, with your heart and soul and being. And it's these parts of us that generally lay dormant beneath the surface of our constant drive to busyness. And it's these parts of us that are calling out for attention and for expression, and that are perpetually unsatisfied with our quick fixes, that are generally addressing our bodies or our dopamine receptors and not our spirit. So instead of trying to quick fix our disappointment and rage and frustration with the world, in this fellowship for 2 days, we channeled those feelings onto the page in community, and somehow, after even just the first 45 minutes of making art, we emerged feeling lighter, and with a greater sense of calm and empowerment and a newfound space inside of us that could imagine different ways, healthier, more creative, more resilient ways of responding to the world, right? Same world out there, different world in here. And I thought for fun, I would just bring, I made these on 2 different retreats, and I'm not gonna explain them to you. It's like show and tell, but I don't know if these are good at all, but I know how satisfying it was to put pen to paper and just focus on something in a completely different way than most of us usually operate in the world as we respond to the VUCA world in which we live. So you could call that space, that open space inside of us, a Mishkan, right? A space inside of each one of us to envision our way out of the uncertainty, or at least sit with it with a greater sense of expansiveness and possibility, really the anti-golden calf. I don't think this crowd needs me to convince you of the power and importance of art. I really don't. To raise our sights above the tragic and mundane realities of our world and help us remember the beauty and resilience and creativity and subversiveness and brilliance and persistent triumph of the human spirit that really makes life meaningful. So thank God for artists and all of the people doing that kind of holy work. I'm just curious, Julia Cameron wrote a book called The Artist's Way, and she says one of the most tragic thing about adulthood is that many people who as kindergartners were quite comfortable calling themselves artists, by adulthood they say, oh, I'm not an artist, because you're not Picasso, because you're not Keith Haring, but she really encourages you to own it, So I'm curious, who here would actually say, yeah, I'm an artist, I'm not Picasso, but I like to make art? Put your hand in the air. Thank God for you. Everybody else, figure out what thing you like to do, whether it's songwriting or textile weaving or pen and ink drawings or improv or writing, whatever it is, that is your contribution. That is something to help create the space that enables you to resiliently respond to this world. And Sela, I really want to pray for you and for everyone who just raised your hand that you have success as an art maker, whatever that looks like, and that our leaders and lawmakers understand the unique and important role that artists play in our society and support and fund it. And we need to be careful. I want us to also know that in this moment, just like gold and silver could be used either to create the Mishkan or a golden calf, right? To create a space in which to imagine and dream, or to close down imagination and dreaming in favor of the illusion of certainty. So we have to be really careful right now of the ways that art can be used to manipulate and deceive and coerce us. The way that art can be used as propaganda, whether to reinforce a cult of personality of a dangerous leader, you know, lulling the masses into generally his, saving power. You know, for example, the massive statues of Stalin in Russia, in Soviet Russia, depicting him as this benevolent giant, you know, or even a god. Art can be used to hide and distract from the truth. You know, think of the filmmaker Leni Riefenstahl, whose artistically beautiful films glorified Nazi ideology and made racism and oppression look heroic and inevitable. And truthfully, you don't need to go all the way back to 1930s Germany to see that. Think of the advertising boom of the 20th century, you know, here and around the world, you know, or whatever ads on social media you are being served and they are trying to sell you, exploiting your insecurities, all of our insecurities, and stoking within us a feeling of lack, you know, by showing us their product and how it can be like an attractive, young, wrinkle-free, tight-bootied golden calf for each one of us, you know, or a cigarette-smoking Joe Camel or a Marlboro Man, you know? Wouldn't we be cool if we were a little more like him? So I don't know how to make an Instagram post, let alone an AI-generated video, but you know who does? Like the president's media team. And so, you know, this wouldn't have occurred to me, but I thank you, Rabbi Stephen. He sort of, I told him what I was thinking about, and he was like, you saw the video with the big golden statue of President Trump, right? And I was like, no, but let me watch it. So for anybody who didn't see this, our president posted an AI-generated video that plays off of all the harmful dynamics I actually just mentioned a moment ago. So against the backdrop of hotels and casinos and skyscrapers in a new and improved Gaza, Trump's Gaza is actually what the video I think is called, money falling from the sky, Elon Musk eating hummus on the beach, while bearded keffiyeh-wearing Palestinian men are belly dancing in flowy skirts, to electronic dance beats, unsing that Trump Gaza is #1. It was bizarre and disturbing, and in the weird way that AI is oddly compelling, you can understand why, you know, someone might have posted this in order to forget about the painstaking work of dealing with reality, right? Forget about why would we deal with the painstaking work of dealing in reality, competing historic claims to the land, trauma, fear, the legacy of European and Muslim anti-Semitism, and the unintentional but real disruption of not just Jewish life because of that, but also Palestinian life. Why look at policies that have contributed to Hamas's rise over decades, or Hamas's persistent claims on the hearts and minds of Palestinians despite devastating results of the attack on Israel? Why deal with any of that when the alternative is so shiny and attractive and easy to picture? We've done the imagining for you, they say. Forget the past. Let us handle this. Turn your attentions elsewhere. Trust us. Right? But the truth is, it's not just him, right? It's really anyone whose agenda is better served by closing down and controlling and containing our moral imagination, and sowing the seeds, therefore, of our own distraction and disempowerment and complacency by using AI to paint rosy and oh so realistic pictures to draw us into. And these actors, I think, will skillfully exploit our discomfort, sitting in the volatile, and uncertain and chaotic and ambiguous reality that we have inherited and replace it with whatever visions they know will help us feel safe, even for a moment, lest we push back, lest we envision something for ourselves that challenges their plans and we can't fall for it. This is part of the message of the Mishkan. The Mishkan reminds us that in the presence of discomfort, we can choose to create, to build community, to offer our time, our talent, our love of God, of the world, of each other, expressed through investment and participation in community. And it's not everything. Some days it really won't feel like much. But it's our little corner of authenticity, of beauty, of care that we can build with our own hands, with our attention. And it starts in our own hearts, in the Mishkan in here, and it extends into our communities, and we just can hope and pray that it reverberates beyond and beyond and beyond, so that we can inspire the rest of the tribes in this wilderness to navigate this VUCA world alongside us, like the Israelites in the desert and the Erev Rav who joined them, moving toward the promised land. We live in times not unlike those Israelites in the desert, surrounded by forces we can't control, and moving, at least we hope, in the direction of what we hope is the promised land. But the truth is, even the promised land cannot solve the existential problem of uncertainty and instability in the world. It just changes the form that it takes. The discomfort of uncertainty can lead us toward temporary fixes outside of ourselves or toward training and teaching ourselves to tolerate and even to embrace this uncertainty with as much clarity and communication and community and humor and health and art and song and authenticity as we can bring as we try day by day to reclaim our world. So that is my prayer for each one of us. Shabbat Shalom.